Aloha, namaste, welcome again. My name is Janapati Das. Welcome to the Krishna book reading video series that I am putting together. If this is your first time, please accept my respects regardless. And if it's your first time, welcome, and feel free to go back into my video series and start from the beginning. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to put them in the comment sections below so that more people can have access. Feel free to share, like, subscribe to this channel. And as usual, we are going to start with the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. So feel free to join in.
Time
Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome again to another Krishna book reading. We are going to continue on with the rasa dance introduction chapter that we started last week, and talking about we've actually had a lot of stories about the devotion of the pure devotees of Krishna and their complete surrender and faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as we've known, that the gopis of Vrindavan were completely surrendered souls. Actually, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has coined them as the greatest devotees ever because of their undying faith and devotion to Sri Krishna. And of course, they had prayed to Goddess Katyayani, or Goddess Durga, for a husband, and their husband, they wanted to have a relationship with Krishna and conjugal love as a husband, as wives of Sri Krishna. So the prayers that people make to the Goddess Durga, who is the overseeing material demigoddess of this material universe, is normally, in a materialist sense, people will pray to Goddess Katyayani to get a good husband or wife materially. But the gopis were not interested because a lot of them were already married, but they wanted to have Krishna, which is a transcendental relationship. And so we were talking a lot about the last time about this sort of relationship between the gopis and Krishna as being on a transcendental level, whereas everything in the spiritual world has a perverted reflection in the material world. So there is this sort of relationship of people who want to have commit adultery or have a relationship outside of their marriage with another woman or another husband, and it is a perverted reflection. So therefore, it is sinful in this material world. But in the spiritual world, to have that desire is directed to Krishna, it is actually transcendental, and there's no tinge of lust or sexual concepts as we know in the material universe. It's actually because love is the nature of the spiritual world. Our relationship, our eternal relationship with our eternal Father, Mother, friend, dearest friend, Sri Krishna. And this is shown in the material world as lust. So the perverted reflection of love, of transcendental love, is not love in the material sense. It's actually lust in the material world. And a lot of things that are passed on as love is actually conditional love or lust. So sometimes people say, oh, I love you. They may have some love, but a lot of it is tinged with conditions. So real love is loving, as Lord Chaitanya prays. You may, he prays to Sri Krishna, you may embrace me, crush me with your embrace, or you may kick me away, but you will always be my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. So this sort of love without this lust in the material universe, this feeling of, I will always be your devotee, I will always be, no matter what, I will always love you. And so that's true love. So we're reading on here, we were continuing in the same chapter here. This material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. This is Bhaktivedanta Swami. Read purport. It is just like the reflection of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. The topmost part of the tree is seen as the lowest part. Similarly, parakiya rasa, and that was that term, parakiya rasa, that relationship with in sort of that the gopis have with Krishna, or wanted with Krishna. Even though they're married, they wanted Krishna as their husband. In the spiritual world, is transcendental. Similarly, parakya rasa, when pervertedly reflected in this material world, is abominable. So this idea of like people, the Hollywood situation, you know, you even see this now. There's this big controversy with Will Smith, but you know, even in his relationship, his wife cheated on him, and they have this relationship idea that they've told everybody that it's an open marriage and we can see whoever we want. But the problem is that when you have situations like that, because we're conditioned materially in this universe to be lustful, to want to be a controller, that doesn't usually go over very well. Usually someone gets jealous, or there's problems in that kind of relationship. So, as we have seen. So this is abominable. It's not recommended. It's not a prescribed situation to go off and cheat on your husband or your wife in this situation. It's not the same thing. When people therefore imitate the rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy the perverted, abominable reflection of the transcendental parakya rasa. Just like everything in the material world, it's like when they want to do something, they always, because we're in the material body and we're conditioned by our material mind, our material senses, and we have this block of vision of our true nature. We tend to think of things materially from the mind's point of view, beginning, middle, and end, finite and perverted, and also a fallible concept, trying to understand a spiritual concept. It just doesn't work. So that's why we have a process. We have a process given to us by our spiritual master to hear and chant Krishna's names, to do certain things. And when we engage in that sort of situation, we, in a humble state of mind, we perform sadhana bhakti. We will gradually elevate our consciousness to understand these spiritual concepts. There is no possibility of enjoying this transcendental parakya rasa within the material world. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one should not imitate this parakya rasa, even in dream or imagination. Those who do so drink the most deadly poison. And there's also, my spiritual master and Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has cited these people in India. They're called sahijas, and they're actually people who imagine materially that they want to be a gopi or have a relationship with the gopi girls, and so they play these parts where they dress up as girls, or they have girls, and someone dresses up as Krishna, and it's horrible. They do these kind of things, and then they have material sexual relations with these people. But this is actually like drinking poison. And Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, it's actually most abominable and most offensive to do that. When Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, desired to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sharat season, exactly at that very moment, the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying its most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sharat season is the most beautiful night in the year. In India, there is a great monument called Taj Mahal in Agra, a city in the Uttar Pradesh province, and the tomb is made of first-class marble stone. During the night of the full moon of the Sharat season, many foreigners go to see the beautiful reflections of the moon on the tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated, even today, for its beauty. When the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kunkuma. When a husband long separated from his wife returns home, he decorates the face of his wife with red kunkuma. This long-expected moonrise of the Sharat season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. When Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon, the red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers. All these gopis were by nature very much attracted to Krishna's beauty, and when they heard the vibration of his flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So therefore, again, this idea of lustfulness is not on the same level that lust is in this material world. To satisfy, they really had a burning desire to satisfy Krishna's desires, to satisfy Krishna's senses, which is the ultimate goal of the devotee. Sense gratification is the goal, but not the goal of satisfying our senses, but actually satisfying the senses of Krishna. So we engage our senses, our material senses in this material world, our mind, all the senses, smell, touch, taste, hearing, in the service of Krishna, for the service of Krishna's senses. That's the point. So to be in a lustful situation of wanting to satisfy Krishna's senses is transcendental. It's not a material desire. So the desire for that is okay. Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran very swiftly, all their earrings swung back and forth. They all rushed toward the place known as Vamshivata. Some of them were engaged in milking cows, but they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and put it in a milk pan on the oven to boil, but she did not care whether the milk overboiled and spilled. She immediately left to go see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some of them were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families, but they left all such engagements and immediately rushed towards the spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some were engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating, but neither caring to serve their husbands nor eat, they immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with cosmetic ornaments and to dress themselves very nicely before going to Krishna, but unfortunately they could not finish their cosmetic decorations nor put on their dresses in the right way because of their anxiety to meet Krishna immediately. So it's good to be in an anxiety to satisfy Krishna's senses once again. So these kind of things, to be kind of anxiety or worried about whether or not you're going to serve Krishna nicely is transcendental. It's all transcendental anxiety. It's not a material anxiety. Material anxiety is, am I going to get sense gratification out of this? Am I going to do something that will make me happy? But here they're thinking of, okay, we got to go out and make Krishna happy, and that's all they care about. Their faces were decorated hurriedly and were haphazardly finished. Some even put the lower part of their dresses on the upper part of their bodies and the upper part on their lower part. While all the gopis were hurriedly leaving their respective places, their husbands, brothers, and fathers were all struck with wonder to know where they were going. Being young girls, they were protected either by husbands, elderly brothers, or fathers. So, generally, especially in this time in Vedic culture, the women were under the care of the men, the fathers, the brothers, the sons, and they gave that all up. It wasn't like nowadays where you could just kind of like skip out and it wasn't a big deal. It was a very big deal to be leaving. It was very, very much frowned upon. Sometimes women were abandoned because they were breaking these rules. But in this case, they all were putting in complete surrender in Krishna, their supreme husband. When a person becomes attracted by Krishna and is in full Krishna consciousness, he does not care for any worldly duties, even though very urgent. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it gives everyone relief from all material activities. Srila Rupa Goswami has written a very nice verse wherein one gopi advises another, "My dear friend, if you desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship, and love, then please do not go to see this smiling boy Govinda, who is standing on the bank of the Jamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight." Basically saying, if you want to enjoy things in the material world, don't even consider going to Krishna, because Krishna, that's why they said that, Hari, which is the name of Krishna, also means thief. That Krishna will steal your heart and take everything away from you for him. Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by the beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. This is the test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person advancing in Krishna consciousness must lose interest in material activities and personal sense gratification. Some of the gopis were factually detained from going to Krishna by their husbands and were locked up by force within their rooms. Being unable to go to Krishna, they began to meditate upon his transcendental form by closing their eyes. They already had the form of Krishna within their minds. They proved to be the greatest yogis, and as is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a person who is constantly thinking of Krishna within his heart with faith and love is considered to be the topmost of all yogis. Actually, a yogi concentrates his mind on the form of the Lord Vishnu. And that's why yoga means to connect, reconnect, I should actually say, your loving relationship with Krishna. It's not just like standing on your head or doing like nice twisty stuff. Yoga is a science, the science of self-realization. Understanding who you are and what your relationship is with Krishna. And so that's why these gopis, who were very simple village girls, but yet the highest of yogis, even higher than most yogis who are striving to merge or have Paramatma, or the Lord in the heart realization, or to merge into the Brahman effulgence. These gopis were actual true yogis on the highest sense, because they were always thinking about Krishna. And even these girls who were held back by their husbands or fathers or whatever, they could easily think about Krishna in their mind, because Krishna is in everyone's heart. Krishna is everywhere. Krishna's energies are present everywhere, and Krishna is present everywhere. Yet he is also in his spiritual abode. So that's why it's said that Achinta Beda Beda Tattva, Krishna is we are simultaneously one but separate from Krishna. So Krishna is present everywhere, and so it's not impossible to think about Krishna and be engaged in the service of Krishna. Whereas, if you're thinking about a girlfriend or something like that, it's not the same as being present with your girlfriend. You're not really with your girlfriend, you're just imagining in your mind. But this actual engaging of thinking about Krishna, and actually there were also stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam, lots of stories, and one in particular about the Brahmana, or I believe it was a Brahmana or a sage, and he was very poor, and he didn't have the money to offer to the deity, to Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So he would imagine in his mind gold ornaments and things that he would offer to the deity. And he didn't even have a deity. So, if he couldn't go to the temple, he'd be offering in his mind all these gold things, and he would be making, he'd imagine himself making all these beautiful foods for Krishna and offering it on gold plates and whatnot. And he did that all the time, because he didn't have the money to do it in real, so he would do that constantly. And it was a type of devotional service to Krishna. And then, of course, we know the story. One time he was imagining making sweet rice, and he thought, oh, it looks kind of hot. In his mind, he's thinking, it looks kind of hot, maybe I'll test it. And he put his finger or something in it, and he burned his finger. But actually, when he woke up out of his meditation, he realized his finger was burnt. And he was like, oh, how'd that happen? But Krishna was very pleased with that, and of course came to see him. And that was the story. So the point is that, our service to Krishna. We can think about Krishna, and that's what Krishna is asking us to do. As I pointed out in other classes, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, and that's the service to Krishna is Krishna consciousness. In our sadhana bhakti, in our service to our spiritual master, we're instructed to do things like chanting, reading about Krishna stories, reading scriptures, hearing from the spiritual masters, or hearing, doing our japa, doing Gauranga breathing, doing kirtan. So many things that we can do, and we're encouraged to do that to help us remember, because we've forgotten Krishna. We've forgotten Krishna by being in the material world and trying to engage in this sort of lustful activity for our own pleasure, like piling dirt over our consciousness. So we're uncovering our consciousness. We're cleaning off the mirror of the heart so that we can see more clearly. And we are very fortunate to have this by the grace of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, and of course my spiritual master, Jagaguru Siddha Swarupananda, Srila Prabhupada, who very mercifully instructed myself and my god brothers and god sisters in such information. So we are continuing on. So we're talking about the gopis being the highest yogis. Actually, a yogi concentrates his mind on the form of Lord Vishnu. That is real yoga. There we go. It's not whether you can stand on your head or not. Krishna is the original form of all Vishnu tattvas. The gopis could not go to Krishna personally, so they began to meditate on him as perfect yogis. In the conditioned stage of the living entities, there are two kinds of results of fruitive activities. The conditioned living entity who is constantly engaged in sinful activity has suffered as his result, and he who is engaged in pious activities has material enjoyment as a result. In either case, material suffering or material enjoyment, the enjoyer or the sufferer is conditioned by material nature. So they're talking about the karmic reaction. So if we do something pious materially, there will be some karmic reaction payback of receiving some good things either in this life or in next lives ahead. If we do something that's very sinful, we'll have to pay for that through something very bad. But in either case, what Bhaktivedanta Swami is saying is that good or bad karmic reaction is just that. So we have to go beyond that. We have to go beyond karmic reaction, and that is in the transcendental service of Krishna. The gopis, associates of Krishna's, who assemble in the place where Krishna is appearing, are from different groups. Most of the gopis are eternal companions of Krishna. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya, Rasa Prati Bhavitabi. In the spiritual world, the associates of Krishna, especially the gopis, are the manifestations of the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna, Srimate Radharani, right? They are expansions of Srimate Radharani. But when Krishna exhibits his transcendental pastimes within the material world and some of the universes, not only the eternal associates of Krishna come, but also those who are being promoted to that status from this material world. The gopis who joined Krishna's pastime within this material world were coming from the status of ordinary human beings. If they had been bound by fruitive action, they were fully freed from the reaction of karma by constant meditation on Krishna. Their severe, painful yearnings caused by their not being able to see Krishna freed them from all sinful reactions, and their ecstasy of transcendental love for Krishna in his absence was transcendental to all their reactions of material pious activities. The conditioned soul is subjected to birth and death, either by pious or sinful activities, but the gopis who began to meditate on Krishna transcended both positions and became purified, and thus elevated to the status of the gopis already expanded by his pleasure potency. All the gopis who concentrated their minds on Krishna in the spirit of paramour love became fully uncontaminated from all the fruitive actions of material nature, and some of them immediately gave up their material bodies developed under the three modes of material nature. Wonderful. That's a really wonderful and a very deep subject. And this pastimes of the rasa dance is a very beautiful and deep subject. I would recommend continually meditating upon these chapters and reading these words, because I could just read them over and over again, because they are very wonderful. And we are 31 minutes into my video, so I think we're gonna probably, well, I'll read one more paragraph about Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit heard Shukadev Goswami. So I've said this in the past, that Maharaj Parikshit was actually a very saintly king who was cursed because of a backstory that I've explained before, but I won't go into too much here. But he was cursed to die in 7 days, and he wanted to hear about the absolute truth. So he asked around and said, who is the best person to hear about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes? A very smart and saintly king. And so they said Shukadev Goswami, and Shukadev Goswami was actually the son of Srila Vyasadeva, who is the literary incarnation of Krishna. He is one who actually compiled the Vedas in the age of Kali. He wrote them down for people to be able to read, because he knew that in Kali people would not see. Previously, everyone knew the Vedas; they just knew it. It wasn't written down. People had it handed down from spiritual master to student. And in the age of Kali, where people's intelligence is limited, and people are too preoccupied with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock and things like that, people are not very intelligent, and so they don't really engage in spiritual activity very much. In fact, there's a large amount of atheism and looking down on religion in general. So people are not very intelligent in this day and age. So Srila Vyasadeva wrote things down and made it very simple. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also came in 500 years ago to give us a very simple process of hearing and chanting Krishna's names as the prime benediction, the primary means of self-realization in this day and age. And so I'm just going to read this paragraph, and then we'll get into some of that chanting. Maharaj Parikshit heard Shukadev Goswami explain the situations of the gopis who assembled with Krishna in the rasa dance. When he heard that some of the gopis, simply by concentrating on Krishna as their paramour, became freed from all contamination of material birth and death, he said, the gopis did not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They accepted him as a beautiful boy and considered him to be their paramour. So how was it possible for them to get freed from the material condition just by thinking of a paramour? It's a good question. Very intelligent question. So basically they're asking, how is it that if they don't know, because we knew that Krishna, his relationship with the residents of Vrindavan was one that he expanded his yoga maya, so that they didn't understand that he was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just thought of him as his child, or Krishna as my cowherd friend, or, I love Krishna as a paramour. He's so beautiful and attractive. So it was a very good question. They didn't know that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet they gave everything because they were so in love with him. One should consider that Krishna and ordinary living beings are qualitatively one. The ordinary living beings, being part and parcel of Krishna, are also Brahman, but Krishna is the supreme para Brahman. The question is, if it is possible for the devotee to get free from the material contaminated stage simply by thinking of Krishna, then why not others who are also thinking of someone? If one is thinking of a husband or son, or if anyone at all is thinking of another living entity, since all living entities are also Brahman, then why are they not all free from the contaminated stage of material nature? So they're making this point that if people don't, like if I think about my wife, or I think about my husband instead of Krishna, because we're all living entities are part of Brahman. We're all spiritual in essence. Why are we not freed from this? This is a very intelligent question. It is a very good question, because the atheists are always imitating Krishna. In these days of Kali Yuga, there are many rascals who think of themselves to be as great as Krishna, and who cheat people into believing that thinking of them is as good as thinking of Lord Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj, apprehending the dangerous condition of blind followers of demoniac imitators, therefore asked this question, and fortunately it is recorded in the Srimad Bhagavatam to warn innocent people that thinking of an ordinary man and thinking of Krishna are not the same. Actually, even thinking of the demigods cannot compare with thinking of Krishna. It is also warned in the Vaishnava Tantra that one who puts Vishnu, Narayan, or Krishna on the same level of the demigods is called a Pashanda, or a rascal. On hearing this question of Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadev Goswami replied, "My dear king, your question is already answered even before this incident." Because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to clear up the situation, his spiritual master answered him very intelligently. "Why are you again asking the same subject matter which has already been explained to you? Why are you so forgetful?" The spiritual master is always in the superior position, so he has the right to chastise his disciple in this way. Shukadev Goswami knew that Parikshit Maharaj asked the question not for his own understanding, but as a warning to the future innocent people who might think of others to be equal to Krishna. Shukadev Goswami then reminded Parikshit Maharaj about the salvation of Shishapala. Shishapala was always envious of Krishna, and because of his envy, Krishna killed him. Since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shishapala gained salvation simply by seeing him. If an envious person can get salvation simply by concentrating his mind on Krishna, then what to speak of the gopis who are so dear to Krishna and always thinking of him in love? There must be some difference between the enemies and the friends. If Krishna's enemies could get freed from material contamination and become one with the Supreme, then certainly his dear friends like the gopis are freed and with him. So this is it's a good day. I want to get to the answer of this, but of course I'm running out of time on this video, so we're going to come back to this. So stay tuned for the next video to answer that. Or if you have a copy of this, you can read through to the end of this chapter, because Shukadev Goswami is going to get into answering this question of why if we are the same energy of Krishna, that not thinking of another living entity is the same as thinking of Krishna. But they did make a really interesting point that, and he will answer this in detail, but of being careful not, because there are, I should say, there are and there have been and there will continue to be people who come to this planet who are basically out to cheat. And it's said that if you want to be cheated, you will find these people to be your spiritual master and they will cheat you. But they come and they have some kind of mystic powers or whatever, and they say that they're God, and they can maybe do some kind of special tricks. And so you think, oh, wow, yeah, you're the same as God. You are God here on earth. But actually, there's no backing in the scriptures at all that says a living entity can be the same as God. Only God can be God. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He comes in his different incarnations, but if they're not mentioned in the scriptures, then all the incarnations that Krishna comes in are mentioned in the Vedic scriptures. So if somebody comes along, you're Satya Sai Baba or whatever, all these different kinds of Yogananda Paramahamsa and all these people who are impersonalist, so-called spiritual masters, they will claim that they are God, that they are the Brahman, and that we are all Brahman, but we don't know it, or something. They have these kind of crazy philosophy that doesn't make any sense. You can say, okay, if you're God, well, can you pick up the Govardhan Hill with your pinky? Can you support the universes with your, why is it that you're getting old? Your body is getting old. You have a body, you have to go to the bathroom. Why is that if you're God? So anyway, this is a very deep subject, and I will read more about it next time. And for now, we're going to get into some more chanting of Krishna's names. So thank you very much. Let's take this off. All right. Thank you very much. That's all for today. We'll see you next time for another great story. Aloha, Haribo.